So
Yes, sir.
today we are going to do
Okay.
reflection at a plane surface. Reflection at a plane surface. So we are going to do reflection at a plane surface. Now I know right from DHS you study what reflection is. So basically, you know, you have an idea of what reflection is. So we are going to do reflection at plane surfaces, a surface which is plane. Now we first define, you know, reflection when we're talking about the properties of light. We spoke about reflection of light as one property. I hope you remember. We said light can be reflected. So that is what
Yes, sir.
we studied the other time. So now we are going to take the properties individually and digress further. So here we are taking a reflection. Now we can define reflection as the bouncing back of light by an object, or some others can say the bouncing back of light when it hits a smooth surface, or when the bouncing back of light when it hits an object. Now, it is, however, it has already, however, been what do you call it? Deduced that uh, shiny surfaces are good reflectors of light. Are good reflectors of light. It doesn't mean that non-shiny surfaces do not reflect light. They do, but shiny surfaces are good reflectors of light. And so shiny surface or polished surfaces like the mirror and there is our polished shoes and so on and so forth are good reflectors of light. And so we can say that reflection is the bouncing back of light by an object. However, shiny surfaces or highly polished surfaces are good reflectors of light. That means they're able to reflect equal amount of light, or the light that hits on them, they're able to reflect almost all. And so that is it. Now, reflection is governed by two laws. And the first law states that the incident ray, the reflected ray, the normal at the point of incidence all lies in the same plane. The second one also states that the angle of incidence is equal or equivalent to the angle of reflection. Now, let me explain. Now, when we say incident ray, you are trying to say that before a light, you say the other day I taught you what a ray is, the path taken by light. And so before that ray hits the surface, when it hits the ray hitting the surface is what we call the incident ray. It is hitting or it is incidenting. And so I want to use a different word. It is hitting the surface. And so that is it. That is what I've done here. So this is hitting the surface. And so it is hitting the surface. So this one we call the incident ray, a ray of light hitting the surface. So you can see the arrow shows the direction. It's hitting the surface. Now, when it hits the surface, we believe that it will reflect because the surface here we are talking about maybe it's a mirror. And so we believe that, or it's a plane surface. So we believe that it's a good reflector of light. And so when it hits the surface, it reflects. When it hits the surface, it reflects. And so when it hits the surface, it reflects. Now, the one reflecting is what we call the reflected ray. And so this one is moving away from this one is moving away from the plane. This one is moving away from the plane. So this one is moving away from the plane. So this one is the incident ray, and the one when it hits the surface, when it moves or when it reflected back, and we call it reflected ray. That is it. Now, when it hits the surface, we have this line, what is an imaginary line. We imagine that there's a line separating the reflected ray and the what do you call it, and the refracted ray. The incident ray and the reflected ray. So you assume that there's a line that separates both of them. Now the line that separates both of them is what we call the imaginary line. That's what we call the normal. The normal. The normal. So there's an imaginary line that we assume separates the incident ray from the normal ray. Now when it hits the surface, because there's a line that separates this, it forms an angle. It forms an angle. And you can even bear with me that that's why it also forms an angle here. And because this one is tilted or it is inclined at an angle, so it forms an angle here. And so there's the angle it forms. And so it forms an angle here. So that is it. And so the angle it forms here, the angle it forms here is what we call the angle of incidence. The angle of incidence. And the angle it makes here is what we call the angle of reflection. And so this one is the angle of reflection. This one is the angle of incidence. Angle of incidence, angle of reflection. And they are equal, they are the same. And so the second law states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. So the angle of incidence here is equal to the angle of reflection. Equal to the angle of reflection. Now, the angle here, the angles formed here, we call it glancing angles. Glancing. glancing, glancing angles. And definitely, since the angle here is equal or equivalent to the angle here, then definitely the angle here is also equivalent to the angle here. So say you know that on a straight line, it makes what they call it 180. The semicircle make 180 degrees. It makes 180 degrees. So if here is 60 and here is 60, then that means it will be left with, I think, 60 plus 6 is 120. So it will be left with 60, and that means here and here will be 30, 30. Basically, that is what it means. I hope you understand.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, we have two types of reflection that we are going to consider. We have two main types of reflection. We have we said that these types of reflections or types of reflection can be grouped according to or are grouped based on the object in which it is. What do you call it? The object that performs the reflection. Let me put it that way. The object that performs the reflection. And so we have two main types of reflection. We have the regular or the specular or reflection, and we also have the irregular or the diffused or the scattered reflection. So we have two main types of reflection. So we have the first one, which we call the regular reflection. Regular reflection. And this one we have the irregular. In other words, diffuse reflection, irregular reflection. Now, when we say a regular reflection, then we mean that this occurs when the surface of the reflection is smooth or highly polished. And so the regular reflection occurs on a smooth surface or a highly polished surface. Highly polished surface. That is it. Now, an irregular reflection occurs on a rough surface. A rough surface. Now, so that is it. So when it occurs on a smooth surface, then we are seeing that irregular reflection has been able to occur. In that case, all the all the incident rays are reflected in the same direction, are reflected or bounces back because it's a smooth surface. So there's a diagram of a reflected regular reflection occurs. So you have something like this. So this is a beam of light or a collection of light rays. Let me put it that way. And when that happens, they pass through the same angle or they all lie in the same plane. So that is it. So you can also see this one. So this one is smooth, a smooth transition. That is from incident to reflection. That is it. So this one, so you get something like this. You get something like this. So basically, that is how this is example of a irregular reflection. So that is not when we have so example of objects that performs regular reflection. They are polished surfaces, so we can talk of we can mention the mirrors and so on and so forth. Regular reflection occurs when all the parallel rays, so you can see that there's a parallel rays, in other this a parallel beam, when all the parallel rays incidenting on the surface are reflected through the same angle. So they're reflected through the same angle, through the same angle, and the image produced is clear and well defined. So the image produced is normally clear and well defined. That is it. And it obeys the laws of reflection because the laws of reflection states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. It also states that the incident ray, the reflected ray, the normal at the point of incidence, all lines in the same plane. So this one, all lines in the same plane. They are all lying in the same plane. They're all lying in the same plane. Now let's talk about an irregular or a diffused or scattered reflection. That one normally occurs on a rough surface. So when it occurs on a rough surface, some of the incidented rays are absorbed. Some of them are absorbed, and some they do not pass through what do you call it, the same angle. they are diffused or scattered. That is the reflected rays. They are diffused or scattered. And so that is a vice versa of a regular ray, regular, what do you call it, reflection. So the surface of the regular reflection is rough. Most of the light rays incidenting on the surface are absorbed. As I've already said, the incident parallel rays are reflected in different directions or scattered. So they are in different directions or they are scattered. And the images formed are not well defined. The images formed are not well defined. Images formed are not well defined. So that is it. So we can also have an example. Let me see if I can use the same diagram. So you can even have something like this. And the surface is rough. When that happens, you may get them scattered, the reflected ray. You can even get some passing, some like this. You can also get some even moving in this direction. So they do not move in the same plane. They do not obey the laws of reflection to a larger extent. So that is how it is. So this one is an example of irregular reflection, an example of, or a diagram that demonstrates irregular reflection. That is it. That is it. I hope you get it.
Yes, sir.
Now, let's talk about images. Let's talk about images. Can I please clear the board or you're drawing? Can I please clear the board?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we are going to talk. I hope I'm recording. So let's also talk about images. Images. How images are formed. Now we are saying that an image is formed. An image. And image is formed. An image is formed when two or more rays. When two or more rays. Two or more rays. Sorry. Oh. Rays. When two or more rays meet or appears to meet. Meet or so an image is formed when two or more rays meet or appears to meet. And so when two or more rays meet or appears to meet, that means when we say appears to meet, that means we can be able to even trace it and see that the way the lines are going, definitely they'll meet at a point. And so that is basically what it means. So an image is from when two or more rays meet or appears to meet. So when you have two rays and they meet at a point, an image is formed. That is how images are formed. That is, now we have two main types of image formation. Two main types of image formation. Types of images. Types of images. Now we have the real image, real image, real image, and we have the what do you call it? Virtual image. We have the real image and we have the virtual image. Now let us explain what real images are and what virtual images too are. So when we say real image is formed. Real image is formed by the apparent intersection, by the actual intersection of two or more rays. It is formed by the actual intersection of two or more rays. So a real image is formed by the actual intersection of two or more rays. So real image is formed by the actual intersection of two or more rays. I hope I made myself clear. So when we have two or more rays, and the rays are actual. When I say actual, they are visible. Let me put it that way. The actual intersection of two or more rays. Then we are saying that a real image is formed, and it is formed on a screen. It is normally formed on a screen. It is formed on a screen. It is formed on a screen. It's formed on a screen. Now let's talk about the latter, which is the virtual image. The virtual image. This one is formed. It is formed by the apparent intersection of two or more rays. It is formed by the apparent intersection of two or more rays. It's formed by the apparent intersection of two or more rays. Now, formed by the apparent, and such images cannot be formed on a screen. They cannot be formed on a screen. Example, the images we see when we look into the mirror. Realize that you can't have them. They are not real. You can't have them. I don't know if you get my point. You can just see yourself, but you can't have the image like the ones they are formed by the pinhole cameras or the normal cameras you've been using. You realize that one you can get them. You can get a copy of them. That one we call them real images. And the ones the mirror when you look into the water, when you look in water, the images you see, you can't get them. You can just see them, but you can't get them. They are formed by apparent intersection of two or more rays. But with the former, which is the real images, they are formed by the actual intersection of two or more rays. And that images, you can be able to see them, you can be able to feel them, you can be able to touch them. Like when you take a picture, you can have the picture of it on your phone. You get it? And so that is it. And so this one cannot be formed on the screen. Not be formed on a screen. This one cannot be formed on a screen. So that is it. So virtual images are images. Then normally they are represented by dotted rays or lines. They are represented by dotted rays or lines. Example is that formed by a plane mirror. So let's see a typical example of the real virtual image. So PSC, I hope you are following. If I'm moving fast, you tell me. PSC.
Yes, sir.
So when I have
Yes, sir.
okay, when I have something like this, something like this. So this is the object. This is the object. Now, so that is it. So you just bear with me that when you have to extend this, this is behind the mirror. There's the mirror. There's a plain mirror. And at the back of the mirror is where the image is formed. But the image is not a real image. The image is a virtual image because you can see yourself, but you can't touch it. So that is it. So you realize that the image will be somewhere here. So this is you seeing yourself. This is you seeing yourself, but because you can't touch, and the image is formed by the apparent intersection of two or more rays. So you guess it is represented by short lines or short dashes or dotted lines, or so that is it. And just as I taught you the other day, from the object, the distance from the object to the screen now becomes the object distance. And from here to where the image is formed, this one becomes the image distance, which is denoted by V. So this one is U, and this one is V. So that is it. And this will be the mirror, and this is the observer. So the observer, when I'm looking, when the incident, when light incident on a mirror, it reflects into the eyes of the observer, and the observer is able to see the image formed behind the mirror. Are you getting it? And the image is virtual. You can't see. Oh. The image is virtual. You can't see it. The image is virtual. You can't see it. Image is virtual, but you can't see it. Image is virtual, but I can't see it. PSC, I hope you can hear me. Hello, PSC.
Yes, the connection is slow here.
But can you hear me now?
Sir.
Yes, PSC. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes,
that is it. I hope you understand everything I'm saying here.
Yes, can you go over the diagram?
So looking at the diagram, when the rays of light incidents on what do you call it today? There is the mirror. When the incident on the mirror, when the incident on the mirror, it bounces back on the mirror because the mirror is a smooth surface and it enters the eyes of the observer. So you looking into the mirror, you also serve as the observer and the object. Are you getting it? So when the light hits the surface, it bounces back into your eyes and you're able to see yourself in the mirror. And the image is formed behind the mirror. Have you seen it? But you realize that this image, you can't touch the image. You can only see yourself, but you can't touch it, or you can't get a copy of yourself when you look into the mirror. And so the image formed is what we call the virtual image. That is why it is represented by short dashes. Are you getting it? Are you getting it? Hello. Hello, are you getting it? PSC. So now let's look out for some characters of image formed in a plane mirror. Characters of images formed in a plane mirror. Characteristics or properties. Props of image formed in a plane mirror. One characteristic is that the images formed are virtual. They cannot be formed on a screen. They are virtual. So images formed are virtual. So that's one characteristic. Virtual images formed. Images formed are virtual. Now, number 2, the images formed are erect. Erect. This E. Are erect. So when you look into the mirror, you can see that the images are erect. You can see yourself that you are erect, like they stand up. Now the images are laterally inverted. The images are laterally inverted. When I say laterally inverted, I hope you understand. You realize that your left becomes your right and your right becomes your left. Have you seen it? When you look into the mirror. Have you noticed that? The images are laterally inverted. So your left becomes your right and your right becomes your left. Hello, can you hear me? PSA, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Now, the object distance, the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here. So the object distance is equal to the image distance. So object distance is equal to image distance. Real images are the ones normally formed by our cameras and so on and so forth, the projectors and the rest. Object distance. So that is it. That is it. Now, images can also be formed by two mirrors. Two mirrors can also be subtended at, or can also be inclined at an angle of 90 degrees, and images can still be formed. Images can still be formed. That is it. So that is it. And the two images, that two inclined this thing, is what that principle is what we use in developing the mirror periscope, where two mirrors are used. I don't know if anyone has seen a periscope before. How many of us have seen a periscope? Uh, how many of us have seen a periscope before? Hmm? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Have you seen a periscope before?
Yes, sir.
You see, the periscope uses two mirrors and they are subtended at an angle 45-45. And so, and the periscope are normally used to view or look at objects behind obstacles.
No.
You've not seen one before? Can you hear me now? So in the mirror periscope, we use two mirrors, and the two mirrors, they are all subtended at an angle 45 degrees each, and they are used to view or look at objects behind obstacles. PSA, can you hear me? Can I clear the board? PSC, can I clean the board?
Yes, sir.
So that is it. So when you have a periscope is something like this. Let me just do a free sketch. And it has two mirrors placed inside. So there's mirror 1, and the same mirror is also placed here. So that's then it is at an angle of 45 degrees. And so when a ray of light is incidented on it, when a ray of light is incidented on it, when it gets here, it hits the surface and it is reflected here. It reflects this side. When it reflects on this surface, then when it gets here, it also reflects. When it hits this surface, because this one is 2 is a mirror, it also reflects. And you're going to get something like this. Are you getting it? So that is to say, for instance, if I have an obstacle here, those days we used to use at the lab a lot in my secondary school. So if you have an obstacle here, and for instance, the person is short, the only thing you can do is just place this one behind this one, on top of the obstacle, or just raise this one a little bit. Then if someone is passing at the back of this obstacle, the only thing is an image will be formed on this screen. An image of the person will be formed on on this mirror as a result of reflection of light. Now, when the light rays incident on this, it will be reflected on this mirror. When it reflects on the mirror, you will be here. So you'll be the observer here. And you can be able to see the object or the person walking around this place. So it enables you to see objects behind obstacles. And it's the same principle that is normally used. They are used by submarines to search for oncoming warship. So the submarines, because they're in the sea, they use this periscope to look for oncoming warships or ships that are coming. They use that. It's also used by drivers in the double-decker buses to also see people at the upper deck. You know that the drivers in the double-decker buses, they are normally at the lower deck. And because they are driving, they can't be able to see what is going on at the top. And so they use the periscope, or the periscope helps them to be able to see objects behind, or objects or people at the upper deck. That's basically what it is this thing. And it is also used by short spectators at football matches to also see matches over the heads of taller spectators. So for instance, when you go to the park and you are very short and someone is taller than you and is sitting in front of you, you can just use the periscope and you should be able to see the person behind whatever is going on the field. So basically that is it. Now you can also look at some use of mirrors. You know, mirrors are widely used by a lot of people. The hairdressers use mirrors in their salons. The mirrors are also used in what they call barbering salons. They are also used in shops to detect thieves. They are used in making devices at the shops to detect thieves. They are also used in cameras and microscope to reflect light onto objective lens. And so the objective lens, they are using the cameras. So cameras have mirrors and all those things in them. A periscope also have them. And basically that is it. They're also using meters to eliminate parallax errors. And that's why normally and electrics and so on and so forth. And when we say parallax or parallax, P-A-R-A-L-L-A-X, they are trying to say that is the apparent relative movement of two objects owing to the movement on the part of the observer. And so when two objects are moving, the apparent relative movement of these two objects owing to the movement of the part of the observer is what we call parallax. And sometimes when you don't see it well, you may not be able to get a good angle of it. So mirrors helps us to eliminate the parallax error. Basically, that is it. It is more or less like you standing. I'm the observer, and two people are running. They are all running, and I'm standing here. And I'm looking at the two people running. They are all coming from this angle. You realize that The observer, because the observer is closer to the person running on this track, it might be very difficult for the observer to be able to, the observer will get this guy's speed right or get this guy's movement very right as compared to this one, because the observer can't keep two of his eyes on both of them, or when you have two cars. And so basically that is it. When you do relativity at the university, you understand it better. That's it. Now let's look out for some differences between images formed in a plane mirror and a pinhole camera. So images formed by a plane mirror, we are saying that number one, they are erect. Now the ones in a pinhole camera, they are inverted. That means they turn upside down. The images formed by the pinhole camera, they turn upside down. Whereas the ones with the mirror, they are erect. They are erect, so they don't turn upside down. Like when you look at me, you can see I'm erect. I'm not turning upside down. That is it. Now, same size as object. So when you look into the camera, your same size, you get your same size. But with the PO camera, the image becomes diminished. So when you take a picture on your phone, you realize that the picture you get on your phone is a diminished of yourself. Or when someone snaps you picture at church, a photographer, and you go for the picture, you realize that the picture is a diminished of yourself, a diminished version of yourself. So images formed by a plane mirror, they are normally the same size as the object, whereas in the pinhole camera, they are diminished. Now, the images formed by a plane mirror, they are virtual, but with the pinhole camera, they are real. You can have a copy of it. They are real. They are formed on the screen. Now, images formed by a pinhole camera, they are laterally inverted. When you say laterally inverted, the left becomes right and the right becomes left. The left becomes right and the right becomes left. Right becomes this and the left becomes this. So that is it. Now, the distance between, but with a PO camera, the images formed by the PO camera, they are not laterally inverted. They are not laterally inverted. Your right is your right, your left is your left. Basically, that is it. Now, the distance between the mirror and the object distance is always the same for the mirror. So the distance between the mirror and the object is always the same. Whereas in the pinhole camera, it is not the same. It is not the same. Distance from the object to the pinhole is always longer. So normally the distance from the object to the pinhole camera will always be longer than that from the pinhole camera and the screen inside the camera. So that is it. And the image is blurred when the surface is dusty or tarnished. So when you look into the mirror and the surface of the mirror is dusty or tarnished, not a little bit not smooth or something, you realize that your image becomes blurred. So normally what our mothers do is that they pour powder on it, then they wipe the surface of it just to give it a smooth look so that they can be able to get a sharp image. Now, when you look into the pinhole camera, the image is blurred when there's an increase in the size of the pinhole, just as I explained the other time. When there's an increase in the size of the pinhole camera, then I say that the image is blurred. Any question? We are done with reflection on a plane surface. Any question, please? So I explained the parallax. I said the parallax is the apparent relative movement of two objects owing to the movement on the parts of the observer. So for instance, when we look out of the window of a moving car or train, so when you look out of the window of a moving car or train, trees, buildings, and other objects in the landscape appear to be moving relatively to each other. So you realize that when you are in a car and you are moving and you look into the side glass of the car, you realize that the trees and the house, they appear to be moving. Have you noticed that? But under normal circumstances, they are not moving. It is you that is moving. It is you that is moving, and it's just because of that parallax. And so normally we use this to correct the parallax error. And so they are not moving, but it is you that they are moving. But sometimes you see it as if they are rather moving because you are in a car and you don't feel like your car is rather moving. So that is it. And it appears that is at one moment a tree may appear to be at right of the church and second later to the left of it. So that is it. So the actual positions in space have, of course, remained fixed something. So basically that's what we are trying to mean. We mean by parallax. The apparent relative movement of two objects owing to the movement on one part of the observer. So that is it. So that is it. Ruben, they've sent you a message, so reply it. Sent you a message, so reply it. So we are done with uh, so if you want to find, I told you that two mirrors can be situated at angle of 90 degrees. So we may have one mirror situated here. We can have a mirror here, and we can also have one mirror here. We can have one mirror, and we can also have one mirror here, and the object can be here. When the object is here and it is incidented on this, it is incidented on it. Definitely, when it hits the surface, it will reflect here. It will reflect here. Now, when it reflects here, it will also reflect in the. It will also reflect here. And so the observer, this will be the observer, and the observer will see the image from here. There will be an image from behind the mirror. So this is the image formed. So that is it. That is it. So, and I'm supposed to draw it too. When traces, definitely we believe that when traces, an image can also be formed here. So you can also have an image from here. You can also have an image from. So that means when you have two mirrors, and the mirrors are tilted at an angle of 90 degrees, you can have, and this an object is placed here. When an object is placed here, definitely we know that when the object is placed here, the rays will be incidented on this mirror. When it is incidented on this mirror, the what do you call it? It is going to bounce back and also incident on this mirror. When an incident on this mirror, it will bounce back and the observer should be able to see an image from here. And the observer can also see that there's also another image from here. And so we have a formula that we use to calculate distance. So for instance, formula for finding the number of images in an inclined mirrors. And so the number of images formed in two inclined mirrors is obtained from the expression n is equal to. So if we want to know the number of images formed by a number of inclined image mirrors, so all over theta minus 1. And so if the question says that find the number of images in two plane mirrors inclined at 30 degrees, then that means you want to find the number of images inclined when these are inclined at 30 degrees. You just put in the angle here, 360 divided by 30 minus 1 is equal to n. And that should give you the amount or the number of images that can be formed when this is not 90, but they are inclined at an angle of 30 degrees. I hope I've made myself clear.